That humble immigrant, whose take-home earnings were just pennies per day, was still a long way from becoming the inventor of a product which would eventually give birth to one of today's most powerful industries. As life would have it, Ralph Baer soon became involved in the very war he and his family had fled.
And I got drafted in 1943. Within 3 months, I started out in the combat engineers with all the other 6'2" Texans and Alabamans and Floridians. And I'm a New York boy who had never been outdoors and didn't know anything about holding a hammer.
Because of his command of the German language, as well as his proficiency in French and English, Baer was assigned to a U.S. Army special unit located in Europe under General Dwight Eisenhower's orders.
And they looked at us and said, "Who the hell are you?" Right? We said, "Oh, we're the MIs." Oh, okay. So for a few days, we did the usual drill. We marched up and down, and all this nonsense. And then three of us went to the commandant of the camp and said, "Hey, we can improve your training rating if you let us train the troops in recognition of German uniforms, German psychology, firing German weapons, and that sort of stuff." Next thing we know is we're cadre, you know, we're 6 levels above the peons. The regular guys were off to the side in a special barracks, and we built a school. I got involved in collecting weapons to demonstrate the weapons and show the weapons. Before I knew it, a museum full of stuff. They got so involved in the history of these weapons that it got to be known in the British community, and English specialists, weapons specialists, they wanted me to stay in the Army, and I was tempted because I was so wrapped up in the history and the technology of the weapons. Because what's a gun? A gun is especially an automatic gun, pretty complex mechanism. It's fun to play with.
When the war ended, Baer went back to the United States and for a while forgot all about weapons. Then he got a job at the famous Emerson Radio Factory. But his ambition to succeed drove him to study radio and TV engineering at the American Television Institute of Technology in Chicago.
I left school at age 14 and never saw another schoolroom except for my home study work and the self-study I did in England. I studied algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2. I knew all this stuff, but I had no real credentials. So there was no way I could get into a New York college. But I saw an ad for a school in Chicago that trained technicians and engineers. I was not accredited at the time. I took a train to Chicago, interviewed, took a test, passed the test, and that's when I went to school there for the next 3.5 years. And eventually I became accredited, so I got a bona fide degree in television engineering.
After a brief period in a medical equipment company, Baer went to work at the Loral Electronics Factory, which was a defense contractor. And this is where his innovative spirit began to stand out.
When I started building ham gear, I bought a few magazines like QSD and CQ, which were the Bibles of the amateur radio people. I looked through them, I studied them, and I built stuff. I mean, any engineer can do this sort of stuff. And you learn by doing, and it's a lot of fun. But pretty soon we got major orders for military test equipment, mostly radar test equipment. And by the time a 1.5 years passed, we had so much work that we were out of money. We couldn't produce the stuff. It had to be bought up by another company to bring some money into the company. That company had another outfit